Hey, you're listening to the Matt Uyeno podcast. As always, super excited to be here. Today, I am sitting down with my good friend and former team leader, Jeff Hatch, the mother effing catch. And I think this is going to be a really awesome interview video. I'm super excited because at 20 years old, Jeff made about $50,000 in a 4-month time span. And that was his first year doing door-to-door pest control. Since then, he's been able to double, triple, quadruple since then.
Not quite. We'll get there this next year. So,
But at least triple, right? Or close to
yeah,
triple.
yeah, about
Tripled those sales since then. Jeff is now 23 years old, 24,
25.
25, 25, 25 years old. And this podcast is going to delve into basically how Jeff did it, what it takes to do that sort of thing. Because look, none of us are under the illusion that this sort of thing is easy, but we are very convinced that it is possible. So this is Jeff Hatch, super stoked. Jeff, thanks for being on the podcast. Like I said, I don't know, this is just a conversation. Normally when I record my podcast, like just me, it's almost like I'm just talking to myself because that's what it is. But Jeff, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit? How did you get started with door-to-door selling in the first place? Because from my perspective, before getting into door-to-door, it was kind of like, who does that? Is that even a thing anymore? I thought that sort of industry died a long time ago, but it's apparently alive and well.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Matt.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely alive and well. I first heard my mom's a dental hygienist and her boss's son. The Idaho culture in like Utah is a little bit different than Hawaii, for instance.
Right.
Door to door is pretty big here in Idaho and Utah. There's a ton of different companies. And so I met with my mom's boss's son who does door to door sales for a different company and just instantly loved the idea. I'm like, yep, 100% in for that. I've always hated hourly wages a ton, Matt. And so I love the idea of being able to push myself and get exactly whatever I was able to sell, commission based solely.
Yeah.
After I met with that guy, one of my friends had met with Chandler here at Aptiv, and he's like, just hear him out, like if nothing else. And I'm like, that's fair. And met with Chandler, went over the numbers of what like his region had done in the past, which is the region I'm in now, and just made a lot of sense to go with him. So that's kind of how I got introduced in the first place.
Yeah, sick. Oh, and also I forgot to mention as well, like I said, Jeff was my team leader, which meant I also did door-to-door pest control sales too. Didn't do as well as Jeff, but that's why I have Jeff here on the show, because Jeff is a killer when it comes to the doors. But I think it's cool to also touch on who's Chandler.
Mm-hmm. So Chandler, he just became a senior regional this year now, but essentially he doesn't even have to knock any doors anymore. He just manages. He has, I think, just under 200, around 200 sales reps under him. So he just manages them now, does a bunch of trainings, helps recruit new people, and is honestly killing it.
Yeah.
He's just about to break 100 doors in real estate that he's bought solely from money his reps have brought in doing pest control doors. So
yeah, it's crazy because that's how I found out about door-to-door pest control with Aptiv, is through Chandler's YouTube channel. And basically it was like, oh, here's how to do real estate, which is what I really want to do, wanted and want to do in the future as well. And his video was basically, hey, here's how I got the capital to invest in real estate, come out to do pest control. And I was like, okay, yeah. And then that's how I met Jeff. And I think, yeah. And like one of the things that I've learned about pest control, unlike hourly, like it's purely paid based on performance. Doesn't matter if you got a college degree, doesn't matter if you have a GED, like anybody, as long as they're willing to put in the work and practice, they can absolutely kill it out here. And so from your perspective, Jeff, like what does it take to be a killer door-to-door salesman? Maybe specifically with Aptiv, or maybe just in pest control in general. Like what
Yeah.
So you've done this this is your 5th year. This was just your 5th
Yeah.
year.
Mm-hmm.
So in your 5 years
5
doing
years
this,
now.
like what is the advice that that you've kind of learned throughout the years, and what makes a killer door-to-door salesman?
Yeah. It's a really, really good question. Definitely something I've thought a lot about, especially
Mm-hmm.
trying to recruit and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest thing by far, I think, is honestly mental toughness. Like
Mm-hmm.
physically, it's pretty easy to go door to door, knock the doors, talk to
Yeah.
people. It's not that hard. But when you dig down into it and you're getting told no, no, no for an
Right.
extended period of time, to stay mentally there and present, and not only that, but also expect them to still say yes. So
Mm-hmm.
that way, everything you're saying is helping you get the sell, essentially, because you're expecting it,
Mm-hmm.
versus thinking they're going to say no. Your body language is going to show that,
Mm-hmm.
and they're going to say no back.
Yeah.
So mental toughness, being able to mentally stay present. And I'm sure, I don't know, would you agree with me for the most part?
Oh, absolutely. Because when I was knocking doors, and obviously everybody has the days that you just feel like crap and you don't want to knock any doors. The mental toughness really plays out practically in how you say it, even what you say. Because on the days where I just was feeling like garbage, they would say, "Oh, not interested," and I'd be like, "Okay, bye."
Okay.
and then
Yeah.
and then you sort of leave. And one interesting thing that I've learned from door-to-door pest control is not just mental toughness, but I'm not sure if I've ever talked to you about it, but like PP, pleasant persistence.
Pleasant
You
persistence.
got to
Yep.
have some good PP on the doors in order to make some sales.
That's one
And
way to put it.
for those listening, when I shadowed Jeff has a crazy amount of what was it? I already forgot. I just brain farted.
Pleasant persistence,
Pleasant
baby.
persistence. Because people on the doors would literally tell Jeff no, like 5, 6, 7, 8 times. Like, so if it wasn't a sell, they would have to say no, like, 8 times before Jeff was able to walk away. But it wasn't like an overly aggressive, like, no, well, why not? Well, because I don't want it. Well, you should buy the, it wasn't like, it was like, hey, can you keep a secret from the neighbors? Yeah, I'll tell you what, I'll do, or you said, actually, let's go through that. Like, what, one thing that I've noticed again, yeah, it's being able to get past the nose. Like for me, when I first started, and like I'm sure with other reps, we'll walk away at the first 1, 2, or the third no. Whereas you and more veteran reps won't walk away until like the 8th no.
Yeah.
So if you could talk a little bit about pleasant persistence, what does it mean to have pleasant persistence, and how does that play out for your sales?
Yeah. It's really interesting, Matt, because the biggest reason it's important to be pleasantly persistent is just because in the society we live in, we're trained to always say no to everything. If you're walking through the mall, someone's like, "Hey, can I clean your shoes for free?" Instantly, we're going to say no, even if it's free,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's even though when it literally makes sense to say yes to that. So we're just trained so much to say no and no. And at first I struggled with it, and every rep that comes out the first few weeks probably struggles with it,
Mm-hmm.
where you have to get past that and realize that people are just trained to say no. And literally it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean they're not interested in nothing. It just means they don't have enough information yet. It's just what they're trained to say.
Right.
The longer I've been in sales as well, the less I've had people actually get mad at me, even though I've pushed them a lot further.
What does that look like though? Like what is it? Yeah. What does it sound and look like when you're pushing, for people who've never done or heard of door-to-door sales very much?
Yeah. As far as there's a lot that goes into the art of selling and everything.
Right.
So not to get too in depth, but body language is a really big one.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times when people are told no, they'll look away, they'll take a step back, they'll shuffle, they'll avoid eye contact. So all these physical things you can do with your body language make a huge deal. I'm usually leaned up against the door frame right next to them. Sometimes I have my hand up on the doorway like this, legs crossed. When they tell me they're not interested, I just give them a head nod, say sure. and then just roll right into something else.
Right.
There's a lot of training set after, which is awesome. So that way it's never, you have to just make up stuff on the spot.
Right.
But we call it rack. So you resolve their concern, you ace, so you throw in something extra, an extra service we can do, or a price drop, and then you close again. Biggest thing I'd say is definitely closing though, Matt.
Yeah.
I know lots of people that can get through tons of objections, but don't get many sells just because they aren't closing at the end.
Well, what does it mean to like close at the end?
You're asking for the sell. So whether you say, my favorite are just option closes. Do you want the inside treated as well, or just the outside? You're going to be here tomorrow, right? What's a good email to send this to? It's an assumptive close. I can take care of it with debit or credit card. What works best for you? Come in the morning or the afternoon.
Yeah. I think that's super important.
I could go on for a long time.
Yeah, because I think like a lot of entry-level salespeople, when they get to the end, it's usually the most nerve-wracking. Like the beginning and the end is usually the most nerve-wracking. So when they get to the end, they're kind of apprehensive. And I know for me, I've made this mistake too, not just in like door-to-door, but when I've sold things in the past, like with like my marketing services, where you're at the end of the pitch, and instead of like closing and saying like, hey, do you want it today or tomorrow? Do you want this or that? Sometimes an entry level salesperson would say something like, yeah, so you want to do it? and it just opens the door for them to say no. And I think one of the best things that I've learned about closing, it's you and that you've really harped on a lot when you were training me, is assume that they want it, assume the sale. So instead of like, do you want it? It's like, yes, you do. You want the garage first, or you want the inside done first? And yeah, I think that's a huge point in closing, in closing a lot. And like, as far as getting past the smoke screens, like everybody is trained to say no. How did you kind of get over the discomfort of pushing them past the no? Because it is uncomfortable when they say I'm not interested, and you're like, totally hear you. The reason I was stopping by, and then you just keep going, and it's uncomfortable. I felt uncomfortable when I was with you because it's like, Jeff is still going. He's
like, Jeff, let's leave.
But somehow the person has a smile on their face. Jeff has a smile on the face. So it's like a pleasant persistent. So for you, obviously practice is huge. Is there anything in particular that has helped you just be more okay with the discomfort of that pleasant persistence?
Practice is the biggest thing, like you hit on, Matt. The more you practice it, the more you actually. Now, for instance, if I get a smoke screen right at the beginning, what a smoke screen is for people who don't know is pretty much you introduce yourself, what you're doing, and they just say not interested right from the get-go before they know the service, the price, anything like that.
Right.
And so they're really not saying at all they're not interested. They're just saying like it's bad timing, or I didn't expect you here. It's just like I said before, we're trained to just say no.
Yeah.
But now, the past few years, for instance, I've gone through it so many thousands and tens of thousands of times, honestly, where it never phases me at all. When I get a smoke screen, it's instantly I got to go through it. If I didn't go through it, it'd feel a lot more awkward for me now, honestly.
Yeah. And I think what's really important to emphasize too is like after you get the close, I'd assume that like you've made some pretty good friends on the doors. I know what was his name? Mario was one of them. And I think I want to make it clear too that like a lot of the sales that Jeff has made isn't from Jeff strong arming them and being this just big, overly aggressive alpha dog. Just that pleasant persistence. And like Jeff doesn't look like a scary guy, like he's gonna like stab you in the dark or anything. Jeff is one of the nicest dudes that I've ever met. And I think one of the, I guess, connotations that sales can have is that you have to be this pushy, overly zealous, like buy my thing. And I think there's a lot of misconceptions when it comes to being a salesperson. So for you as a team leader now, and you've been a team leader for the past 4 years.
Yeah.
Do you ever encounter people having the wrong idea about what a salesperson does? And if so, how have you kind of overcome those objections or those maybe false connotations?
Yeah, definitely you run into people that have the wrong ideas about salesmen and stuff. I think we're
Mhm.
all just trying to strong arm them and
Yeah.
be sleazy salesmen to get the sell.
Hmm.
The biggest thing is just be yourself, be genuine. People really will get that. It's a little bit harder at the beginning when you're trying to go from the book, the script, everything like that.
Right.
But once you can really adapt it to yourself and you can be yourself throughout the pitch, people will see that, and it makes a world of a difference. I
Right.
would say the best salesmen make way more friends on the doors, and everyone that buys from them likes them a lot more than the people who don't sell as much.
So yeah, and I think that's so important too, because like obviously you knock on people's doors, and I've gotten people who are like, you're so sleazy. Why are you doing door-to-door sales? Like this one guy, like, why are you soliciting? I don't want to buy from a sleazy company that solicits. And like they have these smoke screens and preconceived notions about
Yeah.
what it means to be. And yeah, in my experience, not just in like the pest control industry, but in other industries as well, like marketing and things like that. Like one of my mentors when it came to sales, he was super nice guy, but he was able to calmly and also very empathetically sell the service. It wasn't like, so like for me, for example, I tend to get really excited and I'll talk really fast and like, this is the product, it's super awesome. But my
Uh-huh.
mentor, for example, he would just be really slow, methodical with his pitch, and he would make friends, you would make friends, and you don't have to be this just like, yeah, this strong arm, overly aggressive salesperson in order to get sales. And like you said, it's they'll make a lot of friends on the doors, those good salesmen. um
Yeah.
and we've talked a little bit about what it takes to be a good salesman. I'm sure you've seen a lot of people who haven't done really well at all. What
Yeah.
what is like the, obviously a lack of mental toughness obviously would be one.
Mhm.
Is there a common denominator or thread among people who don't do well in the sale, door-to-door sales industry?
Yeah. 100% of the time, it just comes down to putting in the work and the hours.
Mm-hmm.
I've never seen anyone. I've met people from all different backgrounds, all different parts of the U.S.,
Mm-hmm.
all different kinds of personalities and appearances and everything. And the one common thing about people who don't perform well is they just don't work the hours or put in the work to be
Mm,
successful.
right. So what does that look like though? Like putting in the hours? Is it just time on the doors? What is what is the day in the life of a successful salesman?
I think there's three things it really comes down to. One is preparing yourself mentally. So whether that's reading motivational or self-help books, just positive affirmations, different things like that. Whether it's working out helps me mentally a lot, just being in the right mind space. The second one's definitely practicing, especially going out for the first time. You need to put a lot of work in away from the doors,
Mm-hmm.
because if you suck from the beginning and you're just getting told no at the beginning, once you finally get past that, you're never going to have practiced really the part past that. So you're going to
Mm-hmm.
suck at that too. And so that's why practicing so important, is everything should be smoothed out before you have to get to the rough patches.
Yeah, yeah.
And so practicing huge. And then third, Matt, is just the hours on the doors. I
Mm-hmm.
try to knock 10:30 or 11 is when I start knocking, till 3 o'clock, have lunch for an hour, and then knock till 8:39 when it starts.
Nice, nice. Yeah, and like one thing I really liked about you being my team leader is that you were very or you, and by default we were really consistent, go to the gym every day. Um
Mm-hmm.
we go out the doors at the same time, which is why it was hard. So like a little bit about my experience. I came pretty dang late in the season, so I came
Yeah, you came
when
really late.
everybody was like 3 or 4 months in basically, and that was like my first day. And so it was a little harder when Jeff left or when you left, because oh no, the consistency. And I think
Yeah.
that has been like huge as far as like when I was consistent. And I think like in life too, obviously, is that
Mm-hmm.
like what I've learned for me specifically is that I tend to be a sprinter. Like I'll do these like really short bursts of
Yeah.
work. Like, yeah, like let's go do this. I'm
Get way hyped up and then.
super hyped. And then you do that for a couple days, or you do it for one day and then the next day you do nothing because you've burnt yourself out. And
Hmm.
yeah, that consistency is so dang important.
Yeah,
Yeah.
habits are huge, huge. All my best summers I've been so consistent every day doing the exact same things.
Yeah. And there was one summer though where you did not do as well as you've wanted to. Could you talk a little bit about that infamous summer where you felt like you just didn't put it all on the table?
Yeah, it was kind of after, so my rookie year, I was the top rookie in our region, which was really awesome. Made great money, just over 50K in a summer. I was totally stoked. My second year, I started to get a little lazy. Some of my habits slipped, wasn't working out every single day. I work out most days, but not every single day. A lot of times after lunch, I'd take a nap for like 30 minutes to an hour because
Mhm.
you get tired doing this job. Just little things like that started to slip my second summer. Because I had the experience and I also brought out a few people, I made a little bit more than my first summer. I made 80K.
Mhm.
And then my third summer, I was just really, it's easy to get complacent when you're making good money at an early age.
Yeah.
And honestly, I just wasn't hungry for more, which has been a really good learning experience for me overall. But my third summer, I actually was out there for 6 months instead of 4 months. And I made just over 40K. And that was my third year. So went
Mhm.
down a lot from the year before
Right.
when generally speaking, it's like pretty uphill,
Yeah.
getting more and more. So yeah, but that year I just had awful habits. I worked out maybe twice the entire summer. I played Fortnite almost every single day. There were probably the amount of days I had where I worked the complete hours I was supposed to, I could probably count on one or two hands, Matt. So
Hmm.
it was honestly pretty, like by the end of the summer, I kind of hated myself. I was like, what
Mm.
did I just do?
Right.
But it really was good for a turning point for me to look at what kind of person I wanted to be and the effort I needed to put in to be that. And the whole off season, I was working on myself mentally, what I needed to do to raise my goals. And then that next summer is when I had my best summer, made just under 150K, led the region in sales and revenue brought in. I think I finished top 14 in the company. There's a couple thousand reps.
Yeah.
So awesome, awesome.
Yeah, that is awesome. And just to clarify, like, the 50K you made, your first summer, and then to the 150K you've made in your best summer, was that how much revenue you brought in, or was that take home?
So that was take home money.
And I think that's one of the crazy things too, because I think this is one of those things where if you told somebody, they'd be like, "This is too good to be true." Like,
Yeah.
there's no way. But at the same time, though, I think it is a valid point to say that while anybody can do it, not everybody will do it. Obviously,
Mm-hmm.
you're one of the people that who has done it. So what do you say to somebody who's like, "Oh, Jeff's an anomaly," or all these top guys, they're anomalies, like maybe they got luckier or whatever. It's not gonna help me out. Like, I can't do that sort of sales, because you'd probably run into that quite a bit. And I'm
Yeah.
sure some people listening to this podcast are like, "Well, Jeff's one of those special people."
Yeah. The crazy part is there's people that literally sell twice, even three times as much as I sell in the same amount of time. So I'm definitely like good, but like there's people that absolutely blow it out of the water that are just next level and stuff.
Mhm.
So it's not like I'm the anomaly at the very top. Like I'm towards the top, but there's
Yeah.
lots of people that bring in so much more revenue and money than I do. And
Mhm.
the biggest thing though is just you got to put in the work. And I always tell people we're willing to go to college a lot of times for 4 years when we have no idea what we want at the end of it.
Mhm.
And we're willing to go thousands of dollars in debt for that. Why not give one semester's worth of time when you're probably off track anyways? It's during the summer and
Yeah.
see if it's worth it for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's super important as well. So, like, what does the average first year rep make when they're selling door to door? Because obviously you did really well. You got to team leader,
Yeah.
250 accounts. But
Mm-hmm.
let's say let's humor the average Joe and say, okay,
Yeah.
I'm just an average Joe. If I came out there and put in some work, what can I
Mm-hmm.
expect to make?
Yeah. The average rookie for active makes 22,000 take home money in the 4 months. So it's still
Dang.
really great.
Yeah. And like I Well, I mean, personally, I've already done it, and I've been out there to do door-to-door salesman. But I think some people, it's hard for them to wrap their mind around why
Mhm.
you're able to make. Again, it sounds scammy because it's like that's too much money in that amount of time.
Yeah.
If you could, if we're allowed to, I don't know if we're allowed to talk about commissions and stuff, but basically, we get paid on a yearly contract basis, either 1 or 2 years, or well, we get paid mostly on the 1 year. And it's dependent on how much revenue you bring in for the company. The reason
Yeah.
I bring that up is I think it's super important to know that like your income, regardless if it's pest control or whatever, is dependent on how much money or revenue you can generate for somebody else, or maybe for yourself as well. Like if you own a
Mhm.
business, you're paid on how much you bring in for your business. So obviously, if you can make somebody else, let's say $1 million, why wouldn't they pay you 100 grand? And I think that's like that. I mean, that's what helps me understand, I guess, personal
Yeah.
economics and things like that.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah, and so from from what you've been able to make, I'm sure you haven't just um, you know, use it on cocaine and hookers. So like what are some of the things that good, smart, investing savvy reps do with their earnings that they make?
Our region's really big on real estate, which is awesome. Like I said, and like obviously Chandler's huge into real estate,
Mhm.
so that helps a ton. Where he helps reps get into real estate as well, and then a bunch of people like my direct team lead Garrett Myers. He's a real estate agent, so like he's helped me get both the properties I have right now.
Yeah.
So real estate's really big, specifically like in our region at Active, which is really cool.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about like your real estate, for example. So like how many properties do you have under your belt?
So I just have two right now. I have this
Mhm.
house I live in right now, and then I have a condo down in Utah that I cash flow
You know what's really cool though? You know what I just noticed? How you said I just have two.
on.
You're 25-year-old, you have two properties under your belt, and two, it's I just have two. And I think that's really awesome because like I think when you dive into a world like door to door, or really any sort of organization that really has a bunch of high level people, like your bar of what's considered successful just goes
Goes
up.
up a ton. Yeah.
Yeah, like because for some people, just like getting their own apartment to rent, like
Is a
not,
big deal.
yeah, not to get rent, but to pay rent is a huge deal at 20. I mean, I'm still living with my parents, and that's kind of a big deal for me. Um, so the condo that you live in right now, so that's under a mortgage right now, but you do have roommates. So are you
Yeah.
doing the whole house hacking strategy where your mortgage is basically covered?
Once right now on this house, I'm working on, well, just about to start working on the basement
Mhm.
because it's unfinished. Once the basement's finished, I'll actually cash flow about $300 and live for free.
Nice. So you're not paying. So in this current house you have, you're not paying anything for mortgage, and you're getting $300 on top of living for free once the basement is
hmm
done.
Yeah. And
So
then my condo, I cash flow about 350 a month on. So
350 a month. That's awesome. So for those who don't know what house hacking is, like what even is that? Like how are you able to live for free? I mean, we've talked about like a tiny bit, but just for clarity's sake, like what does that mean? How are you able to live
yeah.
for free and make $300 on the place that you live in?
Yeah, well, it definitely helps Matt that I'm single, so don't have a family or anything else. That probably wouldn't be a thing.
That's true.
But
That's true.
pretty much just every room I just have my own room and then rent out the other rooms.
Mhm.
And my roommates, it's nice first off because I actually know the people I'm rooming with. So I room with a
Right.
bunch of friends.
Mhm.
And on top of that, they're paying for my mortgage plus some,
Yeah.
which is
So
awesome.
how does that work as well? Because you might have some people say like, well, why don't you just split the mortgage cost and you guys each have an equal share of the mortgage? I mean, from my perspective, it's like
Yeah.
none of them hold the debt. So if the house goes in fire, they're not
Uh
holding
huh.
anything. So
Yeah. It's
like
like
if
I have all the responsibility. It just makes sense.
Yeah.
Plus, it's just what the market is around what I charge them for rent. So
Yeah. And I think that's cool too, because like I think you could even probably give your friends, if you wanted to, like a small discount on the market value of the room and still live for free and
yeah,
potentially make cash flow on that. So it's like a win-win for everybody.
yeah, it really is a great setup. I love it,
Mhm.
love it.
Yeah. So what are your plans in the future as far as real estate goes? Are you gonna house hack again, or are you focusing on just getting more rental properties under your belt?
I think right now, Matt, I'm just gonna get some more rental properties under my belt. I really like my house I live in right now.
Mhm.
With that being said, in a couple of years, I'm sure I'll move into another house at some point. So
Yeah, yeah, that is, and I think it's really cool because even Ryan Myers, who's the another team lead with Aptiv, he is doing something similar where he has a quadplex or a fourplex. He's living
fourplex, yeah.
he's living in one and he's renting out the others. And he positive as far as cash flow on that one?
Mhm. He makes a couple hundred cash flow as well. So
Yeah, yeah, it's crazy what you can do. Like, what I love about door to door sales as well is that it's so straightforward. It's like
it's pretty simple. Yeah.
you do the work, put in the hours, and you get paid, and then
Yep.
you just kill it in life. Let's see, I had a lot of other questions here. Oh, one thing that I was wondering from you is, because it is pretty straightforward, a lot of people can do it, but that doesn't mean they
Mhm.
will. Are there any, is there anybody that you would almost like disqualify from doing door-to-door sales? Where if you talk to them, had a conversation, what would make you go, no, you shouldn't do door-to-door sales?
Yeah. If I can tell Matt that their work ethic isn't there, it's going to be a no go 100% of the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's definitely the top thing I look to. Also, integrity is really big to me, just because I try to maintain that to a really high standard, and I want everyone on my team to be the same.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I know it gets a bad sales gets a bad rep in general from that, so it's really important to stay top notch
Yeah.
with all that.
Yeah. 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 And I think it's cool too, because like especially in COVID times, um, we, at least Aptiv has still been able to do really well as far as sales go
Mm-hmm.
in COVID. And I think it's encouraging to hear and know that as well, because it's like there are still good opportunities out there for you to make
Yeah.
money, to make a living. Um, but as you know, and as I know, you got COVID for a little bit. How was that?
It sucked. It was worse than I thought it was gonna be. So
Yeah. So like what did it feel like? When did you know you had to get tested?
there were quite a few people on my team that had already got tested and had the symptoms, and they were positive.
Okay.
And one morning I woke up and just felt like complete crap. And I'm like, and
Uh-oh.
then, a few days later, starting to get all the symptoms and stuff.
Mhm.
But I don't know if I got a bad strain or if my body's just really weak, but it took me out for over a month. So it got me
That's
pretty good.
great. So like what was like the top two worst symptoms that really made it suck for you?
The headaches were by far the worst. Just,
Dang.
I've never had migraines or anything, but I just got awful migraines all the time.
Mm.
And I feel like I pretty much had every symptom. Besides, I never got a fever, but pretty much
Oh, really?
everything else.
Did you
Yeah.
lose your sense of taste and smell as well?
Taste I lost for a few days. Smell I kept the whole
Okay.
time. So
Yeah. But then you got back on your feet and then you sold more pest control.
yep,
And that's
it
kind
was
of
a
when
happy day.
that's kind of when I came onto the scene
Yeah.
a little after that. And I sold pest control. I didn't do as well as I've wanted to do. I think that was like a lot of fact. You know what? But no excuses though. I'm fully responsible for my results. Um,
yeah.
what advice would you give to new reps coming in? Because we have like what, half, 6 to 8 months before the next season goes. Let's say someone is looking into it, interested now, because I think it's safe to say at this point it is a little too late to go on at the time of this recording.
Yeah.
So if they're sold, they want to make that money, they want to get in real estate and sell door to door. Like, what can they start doing now in order to kill it and hit the ground running when they start?
There's a lot of things. Obviously, training, practicing is a big one. Mental toughness from reading different motivational books and everything. And then just be ready to honestly kill it. When
Right.
people are pumped about the summer, they come out ready to hit it. They usually do pretty well. So,
Yeah, yeah. And so how many people are you looking to join your team?
so going hopefully for a really big recruiting year. This is the first year I've really pushed myself in that aspect, which has been really good.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping to have 25 by Christmas and then 50 signed by the start of the summer. So
Nice, nice. And for those listening, Jeff was an excellent team leader. Highly recommend. I mean, I haven't
thanks,
had
man.
other team leaders, but Jeff was great because you will be consistent. And that's what I really needed in my life. So like when I was, my first 2 weeks was like I think I did pretty well as far as
Yeah,
sales
you did
go.
really well your first 2 weeks.
And I think that was because of just the consistency. It was like the same time we did the same thing every single day,
All day.
which
Yep.
was like, and I think yeah, again in life too, I think if you want to get results, then consistency. That's just
hmm
it's so dang. I mean, it rings a lot for me because I'm typically again a sprinter and I just like go 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 and then
Yeah.
burn out and whatnot. Um, but obviously, Jeff, you're killing it. You're driving a nice Tesla. You got a couple rental properties under your belt. You've made a
Thanks,
lot of
man.
money in all of these things. And I think it's really cool too. I think door to door is a very unique opportunity just because, again, it's straightforward. Put in the work and just put in the work. And
hmm
it's not complicated. You're not selling complicated products. You're selling bugs to be gone, basically. Um, that being said, do you have any final thoughts for those listening as far as like maybe mindset, motivation, or real estate or anything like that?
Anything at all. Um, the biggest thing is whatever you want in life, you just need to take control of.
Mm,
I always knew growing up that I wanted to be successful, and Aptives just helped be a huge platform for me to be able to be successful. And whether it's Aptiv or some other driving platform, you need to be all in to whatever your trade, your craft is, and that's how you're going to be successful. If you're ever like half in, half out, I've done that with Aptiv, with other things, it just doesn't work out.
yeah.
When you're really all in and you really want it and put the work in to get it, it will happen.
Yeah, I love it. Oh, one last question before we go. Some people might be also thinking too, like, my situation is maybe different. There's a reason why I can't succeed. Could you talk about someone maybe under your team or just like a rep that you've seen that's had a real like maybe rags to riches kind of story? If
Mm-hmm.
if any particular rep stands out. I mean, you don't got to say their name or anything, but yeah, what is like one example of someone who had every excuse to say, nah, I wouldn't be successful in this?
Yeah. There was a guy on our team this past year who was just like raised on a farm his whole life and stuff. And his family was actually going bankrupt. And so he decided to give it a shot and come out. Ended up killing it. Was one of the top rookies on our team. And like totally just changed his life. He just bought a new truck and it was 4 months. And he
Yeah.
wasn't even sure. He actually backed out of doing it at first and then
Mhm.
decided, oh, why the hell not? I'll give it a try.
Right. So he
Mm-hmm.
straight up went from trying to save his pig farm to just being a baller
Yeah.
and really and killing it out there. What was it about him you think that made him um successful in being able to kill it out here?
He had a really big why as to why he was doing it.
Hmm.
If your why is just to make money, a lot of times you'll be decent. But if you have a big why, you want real estate or you want to provide for your family or you want a new car. If you have a really strong why, Matt, it really pushes you
Hmm.
to put in the time and effort to make that happen.
Yeah, I think that's huge. Personally, I've lost sight of my why a couple times, on the doors, and that's the days that just really, really suck. And you just knock this,
Yeah.
not interested, and you're like,
Just knocking endlessly.
yeah, just like, okay, have a good day, bye. Yeah, but thanks for being on the show, Jeff. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for
I
having me,
know,
Matt.
yeah, I know you're gonna kill it. Definitely gonna visit Idaho sometime. Too bad I couldn't do it this year. But you guys definitely need to come to Hawaii. We'll go
Once Hawaii
surfing.
lifts the travel ban, I don't have to quarantine. I'm there.
Heck yeah, man. Yeah, it'll be a good time. But yeah, I mean, as always, we'll stay in contact. Maybe we can have you on, or not me, because I'm the only person doing this. Maybe I can have you on another podcast episode in the future, talk about
Yeah,
more mindset stuff. But yeah,
that'd be
super
cool.
stoked. Thanks for being here. And
Yeah,
yeah, sick.
thanks for having me, Matt. Appreciate
Yeah.
it.